Welcome to the Virtual Marketing Showcase. My name's Julie Simpson and I'm the Managing Director of Resource IT Consulting. I'm really excited today to be here with Martin Neal from ICS Solutions. Martin is the Managing Director of one of the most successful gold partners in the UK, and we're going to be talking about how Martin has brought together sales and marketing in his business to consistently remain at the top of his game. Have you consciously, do you think, moved ICS from a sales-led organisation to a marketing-led organisation?
I think when businesses start, you tend to start with your first salesman. So as the business evolves, then you become more sophisticated in terms of what you do and who you address. So over the years, we've become much more focused in new market areas and in building a marketing presence to drive our sales rather than a sales presence as we were when we were first established.
Okay, so you've evolved the business to bring the two things together as the business has matured and grown and become more successful.
Yeah, the key factor is that the customer needs to understand what is available, both what's available from Microsoft and what's available from ICS. So you need a consistent way of communicating that, and you need an efficient way of communicating that. If you are only able to do that with one-to-one conversations by salespeople, then it limits the amount of people that you can communicate with and limits the amount of people that you'll do business with. So our key tactic has been to widely communicate through our marketing function the availability of Microsoft technologies and our services to build a funnel that then feeds through into our sales function.
So how much do you get the two teams working together? You know, do you involve the marketing people in the sales meetings, and does the sales function communicate with the marketing on a regular basis? Is that how it works?
Well, they fight like cat and dog, of course. But the objective is to have the best possible communication so that the salespeople have visibility and input into what's coming down the line, and the marketing people have a good understanding of what the output of their actions are from the sales team. So they kind of feed off one another.
And how do you sort of structure the campaigns? So do you sort of sit down at the beginning of the year and think about a plan for the year and then roll out campaigns, or do you go on a sort of month-by-month basis or campaign-by-campaign basis? How does it actually work in terms of setting the strategy?
I think when we first started doing it, we used to think of it very much as, we'll do a campaign now, and then when the business from that's run out, then we'll do another campaign. So you have a sort of staccato effect. What we've evolved into is a sort of annual program of events that are always running, and always driving demand in a predictable way for the sales team. That means that we can recruit against high levels of demand that are coming through, and it also means that we have the time and space to work out the most effective way of doing things.
So in that sense then, would you say that you need to measure each element of a campaign as it rolls out? Because obviously everybody knows from ICS you run a lot of seminar programs, you have a lot of foot traffic through the door. And I guess when you're communicating out to a particular market, one tactic like a seminar or some kind of event may be very successful in one vertical, but perhaps that tactic wouldn't work as well in another vertical. Is that, and do you measure those different things to make decisions about what you do more or less of?
It sort of depends on where you are with the life cycle of a given Microsoft technology. So we have a backdrop event, which is an annual series of seminar campaigns. We run something in the order of 50 events a year, getting on for one a week. And we generate something in the order of 2,000 people through those programs. So it's impractical to track, at that level of activity. So for that kind of activity, then we will tend to track that annually by looking at what business we did in the year and then associating that back to events to give us a sense of the ROI. With other things, like the launch of SharePoint 2010, you have something that peaks for a period. So our wonderful backdrop here is a particular activity that we did to make it easier for people to evaluate SharePoint 2010 by providing a free of charge service for them to gain experience in. But that's got a limited life cycle.
Sure.
So you would tend to do that for 6 months or so, perhaps a year at the start of the product launch cycle, and then you would replace it with other activities. So we supplement our standard seminar campaign with specific targeted activities focused on where new products are in their life cycle.
That's really interesting you're talking about the life cycle, because in our experience of working with partners, that they struggle often, that Microsoft rarely enters the market as a market leader. When I look back to SharePoint, when it was first launched in 2001, the product we have today is obviously vastly different. So has that tactic changed over the years, or is that kind of how you've always worked in terms of a launch and the activity that's focused on that launch, and then how you evolve that into business?
Again, it depends. There are certain products which are basically refreshes of a well understood message.
Right. So do you think 2010 is a fundamental change this year? Or?
No. So SharePoint is a continuation and evolution. People are interested in its life cycle. A good example of what's more fundamental are the cloud technologies.
Sure.
So, and the return on investment is a very different profile. So we expect to and have been investing for over a year and a half in cloud-based activities with initial marketing and setting up practices and so on. And we really will only be making substantial profits out of that in a year and a half from the beginning of the investment. But that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
If you want to get into something that's substantially new, it requires focus and investment. With something like SharePoint 2010, we would expect a much shorter ROI because it's a simpler proposition. So we blend these things together, and we're not in control of the fact that cloud computing is taking off, or that internet was taking off, or any of the other breakthrough technologies. You have to essentially react to those in the marketplace rather than be able to plan for them.
It's interesting what you're saying about cloud, because again what we hear from a lot of partners is it's almost a sense of nervousness about moving from a lump sum based business model to an annuity based business model for cloud services. And I know ICS has been fairly involved with this from early on. As you say, you've been looking at this and thinking about your services for some time. What are your thoughts about the connection of sales and marketing in relation to cloud engagements? Do you see that being any different from the classic products that you've worked with in the past, or are you changing things? Or
from a services delivery perspective, we see it as being similar. So the bulk of services are still required at the point that someone implements them. They're paying for the software license over time, but they tend to pay for all the services up front. So we see and expect a similar profile of services in that area. The difficulty is that because it's a new paradigm, it takes a while for customers to understand it. It takes a while for your own organisation to understand it. So you've got to invest heavily in that, understand that that's the reality. And in the case of cloud, everyone understands that it's something that is going to become extremely prevalent, and that unless you're adopting that in the right time, then you're going to be a smaller business or not in business at all. So it's not something you really have a lot of choice over. If you choose to be in the IT profession and cloud comes along, as the internet did, it changes everything, and you either change or die.
So you're definitely one of the reasons why I see ICS, and we've seen the business consistently lead the market, is about that thought about tomorrow and not just about today. So whilst absolutely not destroying the revenues that you've already got or changing something that's working in the business, you're thinking about how is the business going to evolve and adapt for the next wave of how customers are going to want to engage with IT businesses. Is that kind of your view?
Exactly. If you're in the IT business, if you've chosen to be in the IT business, that's a part of what goes along with it. If we made bread, then we could consistently conceive brown loaves, white loaves, and all the rest of it. We don't have breakthrough technologies in the same way, but we don't. We choose to be in the IT business, and when these changes come along, you've got to go along with them.
Yeah.
So our strategy for that has been to try and keep our existing lines running and unaffected by the new technologies as much as we're able to, whilst investing in the ones that we think will be having a significant impact.
Okay, so from a marketing perspective with cloud, and certainly from a sales perspective, 2 questions for you really. The first would be, we see partners investing 2 to 5% of their turnover in marketing on an annual basis. And I'm not just talking about the budget, I'm talking about the resource and everything that goes around a connected marketing offering. So, interested to see whether you think that is realistic for what you do at ICS. The second thing is whether you feel that with the cloud offerings coming through, whether you're looking at perhaps a different type of salesperson, and whether the skills or experience of the sort of people that can sell cloud are the same as you've got in your business today, and how that connects.
I think the first thing is the sort of 5 to 10% is a realistic ratio, and that is broadly where we are. The other thing that aligns to that is, as you identified, is it's not simply the spend. It's making sure that people's goals and roles are aligned to what you're doing on an ongoing basis. So our practice managers, for example, are not on 100% billable targets. They're on 50% billable targets, and the other 50% of their time is in supporting our marketing activities. And that's written into their contracts, and they understand that. So if you're doing that level of activity, you've got to make sure that it scales right up and down the business. In terms of the sales function, the sales skills for new technologies are difficult to recruit against because they're new. So you can't really go out into the marketplace and hire a BPOS salesman because they don't exist. So it's not so much that their skills are fundamentally different, but it is important that you have dedicated focus. And where we have been successful in our practices, as we've set up new practices, is to get dedicated salespeople who can immerse themselves in the technology and understand it and be able to communicate it. Where we've been less successful in setting up new practices has been where we've tried to run multiple technologies for single salespeople, because it generally doesn't work. They will tend to do what they're most comfortable with, and that usually isn't the new things that you're trying to get them to sell.
And I guess if you are sat in front of an IT director, part of the relationship that you build with a customer in that instance is that you can talk intelligently about a specific solution or product, and that you can demonstrate that you're a thought leader and you're a business advisor, as opposed to just an expert for hire, which is kind of what ICS definitely does very, very well. So the effort and time that goes into being able to have that conversation has to directly affect what that salesperson knows about the product and the solution, what the pre-sales person knows about that product and solution, how that's marketed, how that's moved forward. So right across the organisation, you're saying that you connect all of that together and focus those efforts in that way.
Yeah, I generally think I avoid talking intelligently quite well. So we are, our business is aligned around those practices. So we have dedicated BPOS salespeople, and we have a dedicated BPOS delivery practice. It's the same with Azure, it's the same with SharePoint. And the reason we structure that way is, for exactly what you're saying. At the point that the customer wants to have a conversation with you, they want to talk to someone who's authoritative and understands the products that you're offering. And each of these products are so vast in their own right. BPOS is a suite of products. It's got lots of very specific things it does do and things it doesn't do. And you want to feel as if the person you're talking to at that point really understands that. Right at the very beginning, from the sales conversations, then through into the technical pre-sales conversations, right the way through into delivery. That's the ideal customer experience. So you have to structure your business in that way. Otherwise, you will be less competitive to someone who has.
And how much vertical market expertise do you think is required across the products and solutions? How much is that important?
It's important in some markets, and again, it depends upon the period that the product is in its life cycle. So as a product comes out brand new, there tends to be very few vertical offerings. So whilst the customer's preference is always to something that's heavily verticalized, the reality is if a product's only been out for a year, there aren't going to be lots of vertical solutions for it. If a product's been out for a long time, like SharePoint, and I'm a legal practice, then I'm going to want to talk to someone who can really talk my language. So it varies in the product's life cycle, and it varies by market. Public sector particularly, if you're talking to hospitals, you can't be talking about customers and profit margins and all the rest of it. You have to talk their language.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much, Martin.
Thank you.